So this video in B04 Introduction to Python is demonstration video number 5, where we're looking at for loops and while loops using Python. So if we have for loops, we first declare the for loop using the special word for to denote that this is a for loop. We then create a variable, random variable, which will take on the conditions that we have within the loop. So we could define a variable called JJ, which just takes on whatever we have in our vector here. So JJ in vector means that JJ will look through each of the elements in the vector and take on those elements iteratively, and then go through, execute each line of code inside the loop one by one for each of the elements in that vector. So to create a vector simply using our numerical Python code, one handy one is arrange. So we have the numbers going from 1 to, let's say, 5 with increments of 1 and put a colon at the end to denote that this is a special loop. So now we see that our code is incremented, and we could have a simple command like JJ is, oh, where's our closing quote? JJ is JJ. And that will print it out each time. So what we expect this to do is go from 1 to 5 with increments of 1. So that means it'll print JJ is 1, JJ is 2, JJ is 3, 4, 5. So let's run that now and see what happens. So we see that JJ is 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 is not printed at the end. If we change that for JJ going from 11 to 15 with increments of 1, we'll see that we see those elements printed out. If we want to see why 15 is not printed out, we can just print out this vector to see what's there. And what you see there is that goes from 11 to 15. So if we wanted to print out all the numbers in that range, 11 to 15 inclusive, we would have to put a 15.1 here. So now it'll print out JJ is 11 up to 15 inclusive. So that's a simple way of printing out a loop. We can reverse this if my computer will respond. Reversed is a function within Python to do this backwards. So see, reversed means that we'll go backwards through this loop. So now we see it going backwards 15, 14, 13, 12, 11. If we did -2 to 5.1, it would take on the elements of that vector. So we see it's starting at 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, -1, -2. If we take that away and run that, it'll go through the more expected direction, -2, -1, 0, and so on up there. We can add on further commands inside. And let's say we call this line second line of loop. And each time we run through this, that command will execute as well because it's indented too. So lines 9 and 10 will be executed each time. So you can see that that executed there. Now, if we have some scalar, some fixed value like k is equal to 5, and k is comma k, we see that although JJ changes all the way through the loop, k does not. K is fixed at the value of 5. And we can print that at the end. We can print out unincremented JJ is comma JJ, and print k is comma k. So that means we can see, if I can do it properly, see what these values are as we go through the loop. And what we see is that JJ is now 2 at the end and k is still 5. K has not changed. However, we can do calculations within there. So JJ by k over 2, that can work perfectly well. And that will perform that calculation within that loop. So you see calculations are useful, loops are useful for iterating calculations as we wish to do so. So we could have some vector x1 is equal to np.array and we call array 1, 22, minus 33, minus 88. I put x1 here instead. We'll move this just to see what JJ is. So JJ should take on the values of x1 as we go through that loop. So we're expecting 1 and then 22, minus 33 and minus 88, which is what happens. So you can see that printing out there as we go along. If we reverse x1, that'll work as expected. It will start with minus 88, then minus 33, 22, and 1. So those are kind of the central tenets of using for loops in Python. So we have K and JJ. So let's stick with them when we're doing while loops. So for while loops, we need to define what JJ is first. So let's say JJ is -2, like we had before. A while loop is defined with while as the first command. We have a space afterwards, just like a for loop. While JJ is less than 5, we're going to do something. So put a colon at the end to indicate our criteria that JJ must be less than 5. So this must evaluate as true. Once it evaluates as false, this will stop. Our code is indented for the loop. So we're going to add JJ is equal to JJ plus 1. So we're going to increment it each time. So the loop is not finite, infinite. And then we're going to print it out. JJ is, JJ. So let's try this simple loop to check that it works. So you can see JJ is now defined at the start here. And it starts at there, we're adding 1 onto it. So it goes from minus to -5, -2 to -1 to 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So at the end, JJ is 5 and K is 5. If we change this criteria down to 2, this means JJ goes from -1 to 0 to 1, 2. So just 4 times through that loop. And we could have additional commands here. Print command here. And it'll execute all those commands within that loop. In the same way as before, we could, for example, adjust things. So K is equal to K minus 10. And that will reduce K as we go through the loop. So we can handle multiple variables inside a loop. You see there at the end, K goes from 5 to -5, -15, -25, and -35 at the end. If we leave out this increment, what will happen is that our loop continues to run because it never increments. So you can see there, it's just running and running and running. Nothing happens. So we can hit the red stop button. So that's our basic introduction to loops with Python. So please practice it further on your own when you're doing trying to learn how it works.